Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight about Birds 101. Today we have Barb Whipkey, the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in Lexington Park and in LaPlata. She's going to speak to us about all the different birds and any questions you might have and about what they need to eat for the summertime.
Okay, so actually this one is Bird Feeding 101. So this is all about beginning bird feeding. And then our next one will be the one with the top 20 backyard birds, where we'll cover all the different birds in that. So we'll work up to that one. So let me share screen here. So Bird Feeding 101. As you can see there, for those that may not know, that is a bluebird there. On the right, we have a daddy bluebird, and on the left is a baby bluebird. I'm pointing that out because right now, you may be seeing these around your feeders. Bluebirds are nesting right now. They are currently on their second nesting, and they nest 3 times throughout the summer. So if you don't have a nest box up, it is not too late to become a bluebird landlord. You can still get a nest box up and still potentially get 2 more nestings out of them. Once they leave the nest box, it's daddy's responsibility to teach the bluebirds to nest. So that's what this dad is doing there. He has brought that baby bluebird, and you can tell it's a baby. If you can look underneath closely there at the chest, it's kind of a speckly chest where the daddy has an orange chest, and the mama bluebird would have an orange chest as well. She just wouldn't be as bright blue, vivid color as the daddy is. But any with speckled chests are going to be your baby bluebirds. So watch for those as you're watching your feeders. And then backyard bird feeding. What we're going to cover tonight is why feed the birds, different feeder options that are out there for you, feeder cleaning, what foods to offer, dealing with unwanted visitors, because as soon as you put those feeders up, you will have unwanted visitors. We hear all the time, oh, I don't have squirrels. And we'll ask, do you see squirrels in your neighborhood? Yeah, but they don't come in my yard. Well, they will the minute you put up a feeder. So if we're going to help you get started feeding, we definitely need to have solutions for you. And then creating a bird feeding habitat. We'll hit on that slightly, but this is going to be a series of 3. So I mentioned that the next one will get more in depth on our top 20 backyard birds, what feeders and foods to use for them. And then the third in this series is going to be creating that whole habitat and bringing all of this together. So first off, why feed the birds? The obvious is it's very enjoyable. Birds are not going to become dependent on our feeders. They appreciate the handout that we're giving, but they honestly only get about 10% of their food from our feeders. So they appreciate what we're doing for them. You know, they're there first thing in the morning, but they will not become dependent. So if you know that a couple years down the road, you're going to be moving from that house, you don't have to worry about it, because they will just move on and find somebody else's feeder, or they'll feed off of the plants and trees and bushes in your yard. They're just using your feeders as a little extra bonus. However, times like this year when we have, it's hard to believe that we are in a drought, but we still are in a drought, even with all that rain we've had. If you have spent much time outside, you may have noticed that this year the holly bushes did not set on berries, and most of our oak trees did not set on acorns. So the birds are a little more appreciative than ever for those extra handouts that you're giving. With that said, you've probably noticed they're spending more time at your feeders than normal. So your feeders are a little bit busier than they normally are. So times like these, those feeders are super appreciative. Also, when it's raining, those birds that eat insects, the insects aren't flying. The native plants and the bushes and that are heavy, so they're not able to get to insects that would be on the plants. So again, they're coming to your feeders a little more often. If on your feeders you add a weather guard to them, then they're able to still get to your feeders even when it's raining. So that's another way you can help out when it's raining. So choosing a feeder, when you're looking for that feeder, there's things you want to look for. You want to look for a feeder that's easy to fill. So as you're shopping around for that feeder, pay close attention to how easy is it to fill. How easy is it to clean? You want to look for feeders. Here. So anyone who's fed for a while knows that a lot of times you have to unscrew the bottom or get in there with a screwdriver and dig at them. There's a lot of feeders out there now where the bottom pops off. And so you can pop that bottom right off to be able to get in there with a brush and clean them. So pay attention, no matter how cute that feeder may be, if it's not easy to clean, you can't get into it easily, it's going to be tough to clean. If you're not able to clean it, you're not going to clean it. So then it no longer becomes a safe feeder for the birds, which is number 4 on that list of choosing a feeder. And then you want it to be sturdy. If it breaks in 2 months, even though it was cheap, it's going to get pretty expensive if you have to keep replacing that feeder every 2 months. So as you're choosing a feeder, pay attention. Is it easy to fill? Is it easy to clean? Is it a sturdy feeder? Is it safe? Safe, 1, because you can clean it. 2, is there any sharp edges on it? Is it going to rust? Any of you that have been in our store notice that we don't carry, I think we have 1 wooden feeder, and it is a log that is basically we have 2 actually. They're suet feeders. They're ones that aren't meant to last forever. They're a very cheap feeder that you end up throwing away every year or so because there's not a way to really clean them. But with suet will in time mold and that. And your best bet at that point, once they turn black and that, you're going to throw them away. Our expensive feeders are made out of a recycled material that you can clean, you can bleach, made out of an antimicrobial material. So it's safer, you're able to clean it, and it's just healthier for the birds. So pay attention to that. Look at what material they're made out of. Some places you may be fine with wooden feeders. Here in Southern Maryland, where it's so hot, humid, damp, it's just wood is just not a good mixture. And then feeder options. So different birds have a favorite yard, but they also have favorite feeders. One of that reasons may just be because they like that feeder. But another reason is their eating style. So birds like our cardinals are not able to land on a perch and turn sideways to eat. Cardinals have a short, thick neck, so they can only eat forward facing. So if you were to put out a feeder like this one, they couldn't eat from that because they cannot land on that perch and turn sideways to eat. So hopper feeders are, if you ask a child to draw a picture of a feeder, a hopper feeder is what they're going to draw. The ones that look like houses, the ones our grandparents have been using forever, something like this. Cardinals can eat from that because they can land on it and then eat forward. The same with mourning doves, some of our sparrows. Most of those feeders or those birds you see on the ground eating are those birds. They're called ground feeders. The reason they're ground feeders is because they have those short, thick necks. But as soon as you offer them a feeder that they're able to eat from, you bring them right up to the feeders. So a hopper feeder is a feeder that any bird can eat from. Those ground feeders are what we call perching birds also. A perching bird would be like your woodpeckers, ones that can cling from trees. Or I'm sorry, clinging birds. Ones that can cling from trees can still eat from this because they can, as well as clinging, they can also perch here. So a hopper feeder is just a great all-around feeder to have in your yard. And then a tube feeder. So a tube feeder is going to be one like this. Again, it's got the weather guard on it. So I mentioned something like this, those cardinals could not eat from, but in this case, we've put a tray on it. So with this tray on it, now those cardinals and doves can eat from it because they would land on this tray and they can eat from that bottom port there. So a tube feeder is going to be the long one that just looks like a tube. That's going to let anybody eat from it as long as you put the tray on it. But if you don't put that tray on it, that's going to, you're going to count out any of those ground feeding birds. So this can come in handy though, if you're having problems, somebody walks in and says, I'm tired of the doves. They're taking over my feeders. Then we would take off the tray feeder, and this could be a great solution, is a tube feeder without a tray on it, because now those doves cannot eat from it. And again, easy to clean because you pull that bottom off. So if you're at a store and you're looking at a tube feeder, keep in mind, there's a lot of different styles out there, but you would want to look for a tube feeder that has a tray on it if you want to be able to feed the cardinals. Next up is going to be a tray or a platform feeder. And it's basically just what it says, a tray feeder. The one in that picture would actually be a combination feeder. If you see, the top has a hopper on it, and then the bottom has a tray on it. So that is a combination. That's a feeder that everybody can eat from. So with a tray feeder here, you would put your food in there. I absolutely love tray feeders because everybody can eat from them. I call them my smorgasbords. As I'm filling my feeders, I put a little bit of everything in there. I'll throw some of my blends in there, my straight seeds, which we'll get into a little more as we go on. If we're having a tough snowstorm come in, I'll even open a suet cake and place it in the middle, which will help them trying to keep warm. So with tray feeders, I also recommend that you pop a weather guard on there, which is going to help keep your seed dry. And again, when it's raining, it's snowing, the birds can still come in and feed. But for you, it's also going to protect your investment of seed. So that's a win-win. Next up is cylinder feeders. Cylinder feeders are a great way to feed. Cylinders are these little logs of seed. They have holes in the center, and then you just pop it on a feeder such as this and hang it up. So the plus with cylinder feeders is it lasts a lot longer. So in the cold winter months especially, you're not going out as often to fill your feeders. The other plus is the birds have to work longer to get their seed. So they tend to stay around as they're working to get those little seed nuggets out of there. This particular one is a combination one, just like that. So it has the cylinder, but then it has a tray on it as well. And then of course has the built-in weather guard on it too. So This particular cylinder I have here, if you notice, it's red. It has hot pepper in it. So when we get into I mentioned we'll cover problem solving. Those squirrels are not a fan of hot pepper. Birds don't have the same taste receptors, so they don't mind the hot pepper. They have a dry mouth. So that can be one solution to keep those squirrels away, is using hot pepper foods, which you can get hot pepper in cylinders. You can get loose seed with hot pepper, suets, everything. So that can be one solution when we come to that problem solving. Okay, next up is finch feeders. So if you're already feeding the birds, you're probably starting to see the cute little yellow goldfinch at your feeders. The bright yellow ones you're seeing are the males. The females are a little more subdued. That's the case with most songbirds. We need them to be more subdued because they're going to be doing most of the nest sitting. So the finch feeder, the difference with it, I know it'll be hard to see here, but let's see if I can bring it up there. Maybe if I can figure out which way is up. Okay. It has just a little tiny hole there at the port. And this is for a seed called Niger. Niger's our only seed that's imported into the US. It's a very tiny little seed. It's not grown in the US, so it has to be imported. By using this type of feeder, only finches can eat from this feeder. Occasionally, we will see some downy woodpeckers pop in there and get a few nuggets, but mostly it's going to just be your finches eating from this. So the nice thing with having a finch feeder, if your other feeders are really busy, with having a finch feeder going, it will give a place when your other feeders are busy to offer just the finch. Goldfinches, those little yellow ones I mentioned, are the very polite little birds. So they tend to sit up here and wait for a port to open on your feeders. Then a port opens, they come flying in, and by the time they get there, somebody has already grabbed that port. So there they go back up to wait again. So by offering a feeder that only the finch can eat from, that means they have a spot that they have less competition at. So it's always good to have a finch feeder out there going for those finches. Finch tend to eat from the top up. So if your feeding station has multi-level hooks on it, you're going to hang that finch feeder from the highest hook because they want to eat from the highest position. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me who did the science on this, but it is true. We've had customers come in and like, the finch won't eat, and we'll have them move it to a top hook and it magically fixes it. So that's one thing you can do. Also, once a week with a finch feeder, you're going to give it a little shake up to loft that seed. So if that little nugget there got wet, you're just going to loft that up. Next up is suet feeders. So a lot of people are familiar with feeding suet in the winter months, but suet is actually a year-round food. And actually right now, if you have suet out, you probably have noticed that you are going through it much quicker now than you were in the winter. Baby birds get all of their moisture from their food. Mom can't just bop in their nest with a baby bottle or bring them a spoonful of water. So they are reliant on bringing them insects or foods that have a high moisture content to be able to get moisture into the babies. So suet is that perfect food for them to use. So suet is, I am going through, gosh, I don't even know how many types of suet I have out there right now, but I'm going through suet like crazy right now. And the way you can tell that you have a nest going somewhere is watch when you have a bird at the suet feeder and you'll see them eating some and then leaving with a beak full of suet. That's a sign that they are taking that suet back to mama bird or back to a nest. So kind of watch where they're going and it'll give you a clue like, aha, I've got a cardinal nesting in that bush, or I've got a brown thrasher nesting in there. So just kind of watch where you see them heading to, and that'll give you a clue where you have some nesting birds going. This particular suet feeder, I know you're familiar with the green cages maybe that you put suet in. This one is what we call a tail prop. When woodpeckers eat, they use their tail for balance. So this is just a little tail prop to allow them to balance better. And this will help to bring in some of your larger woodpeckers. We even have one that has 2 of these squares. So it will help to bring in that pileated, the largest woodpecker out there. That's the one that looks like Woody Woodpecker. And then next up is the peanut feeders. So we've got 2 styles of peanut feeders here. The first one I'm going to show you is peanuts in the shell. And this is to bring in, yes, it will bring in the squirrels if you don't hang it on a squirrel-proof location. But it is actually to bring in your downy, or I'm sorry, your blue jays. Your downy woodpeckers will also come for it. And your little tiny tufted titmice. That's the small gray songbird that has the little crest on them. They also love peanuts in the shell. You may be thinking that, oh, those blue jays are bullies. I don't want them at my feeders. But you actually do want those blue jays. They are the guardian of your yard. They're going to let you know if you have a hawk that's watching your feeders. They're going to help chase those hawks away. They're also going to let you know if there's a snake trying to get to a nest. So those blue jays are actually a great one to encourage into the yard. So you can bring those in. Blue jays are very intelligent. They can take a peanut and hide it up to 2 miles away, and they'll remember where they hid it. Unlike the squirrel that hides it and out of sight, out of mind. So blue jays are really a good one to bring into your yard. So if in the past you've discouraged it, I would encourage you to try to get those blue jays in to help watch over your flock. So somebody's probably told you at once, oh, they will eat baby birds. But I'm here today to tell you that so will those bluebirds of happiness, and those pretty little cardinals will do the same. It's a cruel world out there, but all of those will do the same thing. So bring those blue jays in and let them help protect everybody from some of those other bigger predators. And then the next peanut feeder is for peanut splits. So this one is going to really bring in your clinging birds. This year we are seeing a lot of the white-breasted nuthatches. Because of that shortage of acorns we've talked about, they are really reliant on us to help them out this year. So if you want to get those in, consider one of these with some peanut splits in it. You can also mix this with bark butter bits. If you're not familiar with bark butter bits, I will show it when we get to the food section. They're another type of suet nugget. But peanut splits, they are just draining our peanut splits with those white-breasted nuthatches right now. Chickadees, titmice, they will also eat it. If you put that tray on the bottom of this, bluebirds and cardinals will also eat it. Both bluebirds and cardinals are huge peanut lovers too. A lot of people don't realize that they are big peanut lovers. So adding a peanut split feeder will increase your bird activity. And then next is nectar feeders. If you're not already feeding the hummingbirds, now is the time to get those hummingbird feeders out there. Hummingbird activity is great right now, but you may have seen a lot of activity and now you may have seen it die off a little bit. What's going on is the females are nesting right now. So you may be seeing more males at your feeders than females. So those females have to do everything on their own when they're nesting. Those darn males mate with every female. Yeah, I'm looking at you. They mate with every female that comes into their territory, and then they're off to that next female. Those females have to build the nest, feed the young, watch over and guard that nest, because he has moved on to the next lady. And every female that comes into his territory belongs to him. So once she's done with that one, she brings those, shows them where the feeders is, teaches them to hunt, and she's going to raise another nest. So every female in your area that's feeding is going to raise 2 sets of young while she's here this summer. Each nest will have about 2 to 3 eggs in it. So your population is really going to increase this year. As long as you keep that fresh nectar going and they know they can count on you to help them out, they'll be back to see you again in the spring next year. So every year, what you're going to notice is that your population is really going to grow. One of our team members was just telling me, she's fairly new to the area. Last year, she really got into feeding, and this year she has really seen the increase in her hummingbird activity from last year to this year, because she was a faithful hummingbird mom last year. So, feeding them is really going to increase your activity year over year. So, okay, that is feeders. So let's move on to feeder cleaning. So feeder cleaning is very important. So the first thing you're going to do is discard any old food, debris from the feeder. Then you're going to find some type of big container, Rubbermaid tub, old bin, 5-gallon bucket, something like that. If you have a deep sink, that works great as well. Fill that with some water and hot water and dish soap. Scrub that feeder with brushes or rags. If you've got some of the longer tube feeders, we have several brushes like this that you can get down in there to get those clean. Then you're going to thoroughly rinse all of those parts. So you can, if you've got a hose or something to rinse them with. If not, a flower watering, just like the garden pitchers to water flowers, those can be good to rinse as well. Then you're going to use another tub, container, 5-gallon bucket, and you're going to mix a solution of 1 part bleach, 9 parts water. Dip that feeder in there and coat it well, let it sit for a couple minutes to disinfect that. Then again, you're going to rinse it well to make sure you get all that bleach off. Let the feeder completely dry, and then refill it with fresh food. We will have customers come in and tell us, I'm not getting any birds, when every other customer is saying, my feeders are off the hook. Our first clue is it's either 1, a hawk, or 2 dirty feeders. A few years ago, we had that with a customer, and we had tried everything, hawks. Has there been anybody cutting down any trees in the area? They brought their feeders in. We also offer a feeder cleaning service here. Brought the feeders in. We cleaned all those feeders. They took them back, and like magic, their birds reappeared. So birds, in order to survive, they somehow have to know these things. And if a feeder is dirty or the food is no good, they will turn their little beaks up at it. So if you're noticing that one of your feeders, the food is not going down in that one, but they're eating everything else, empty that feeder, clean it, and start over. And you'll probably see a change. But it's really important, clean those feeders. Definitely at the change of every season. If we've had a lot of rain, empty those feeders and clean them. If you have weather guards on them, it will help you during the rainy season, not have to change them as much. But, you know, definitely every couple months you want to clean those feeders and change that food out. Finch food, anytime you have finch food out there that's more than 3 weeks old, you can empty that food. Like I said, the finch food has to be imported, so it's older than any other seed when it gets to us. And goldfinch are the most finicky little birds out there. So if your finch food has been out there more than 3 weeks, dump it in the woods. I always say don't dump that one out, toss it in the woods, because those fox, those possums will still eat it. It's not bad necessarily. It's just the goldfinch are finicky. Okay, and then all bird seed is not created equal. On this little chart I'm showing you here, that left side of the seed is our seed. The right side is just a random seed. That top small portion, about a third of it, is actual seed. That bottom 2/3 is filler seed. That is milo that the birds are just going to throw out. That's the little red balls that you're seeing there. What you're going to see is your birds throwing that out and the squirrels gobbling that up. The turkeys will, if you've got turkeys in your area, they'll come in and eat that. But that is not bird seed that our birds will eat. If we lived somewhere where we had wild quail, they would probably come in and nibble on that. That is filler seed that the big companies put in there so it makes it look like you're getting more and paying less. But that's just filler seed. So you want to make sure when you're shopping for bird seed, don't buy anything with the red balls in it. If there's anything with those white balls in it on the top, kind of whitish yellow, that's called millet. And you want a very small amount of that. We do have some seed that has millet in it, but it's a small amount of millet. If you have problems with house sparrows, if you know what house sparrows are and you are having problems with them, you have nesting bluebirds, then you don't want any millet whatsoever. And if you shop with us, let us know, and we can actually put a note in your account to make sure you're not buying anything with millet. We have several customers we do that with to make sure you're not feeding anything with millet, because millet is like candy to sparrows. And so we don't want to encourage them at your feeders. Sparrows, now this is only house sparrows, so let me clarify that. Only house sparrows are bat sparrows. They're a non-native species that do kill our bluebirds. So if you're a landlord for bluebirds, we don't want to encourage house sparrows in your yard. So one way we can do that is by trying to not feed the food that they love. Basically, like a Snickers bar to me is millet to them. So we'll just put a quick note in your account, make sure none of your food has millet in it. And it will pop up when we pull up your name, and we'll say, oh, you know what, this cylinder has millet. Let's help find another one. So just a little trick. You can just remind us if you do shop here to put a note that to make sure you're not getting anything with millet. But that's just a trick when you're buying your bird seed. We don't have anything in our store that has the red balls. We do have a small amount with the millet because during the winter months, the dark-eyed juncos, which are our winter birds, some people know them as snowbirds, and our white-throated sparrows. A lot of people want millet for them. Okay, then on the left side, we're going to talk about some different seeds. So first off, when we talk straight seeds, this is basically just a seed that is not blended with anything else. So the first one, top left, is black oil sunflower. And it basically, you can probably see it clearer in that picture than in my bag here. But basically it is just sunflower. If you're only going to feed one type of seed, this is the one seed that I would say to buy. It's also the black that you see in that tube feeder there is black oil. It is the one single seed that will feed the most birds. But with that said, if you want to feed bluebirds are not able to crack a shell. So you would need something else to try to bring the bluebirds in. But if you only want, I just want one seed, I want to keep this easy, black oil's that one seed. Then you come in and you're like, oh my gosh, these blackbirds, these grackles, these starlings, they're driving me crazy. That one right below that is safflower. It's a white seed and has a very hard shell on it. Blackbirds have a gape in their bill and they struggle to crack this shell. So this would be one we would point you to. Another win with safflower is it has a bitter taste, so a lot of squirrels don't like safflower. So it can kind of be a solution there as well. It is a favorite food of the cardinals. Cardinals and house finches both absolutely love safflower. And I said house finches. House sparrows were those birds we don't like. House finches are a different bird. We do like house finches. Another straight blend, I mentioned it earlier with our finches, is Niger. It's a tiny, tiny seed, and I'm sure you cannot see this one on there. It's just a little tiny black seed. And it's the one that's going to go in that finch feeder. It's one of the two that can go in the finch feeder. And then, let's see. This one I'll kind of hit on here. It's not really a seed. It falls in another category, but I have it in this cart. So I'll show you. This is the peanut splits. So I talked about that feeder. This one, if you wanted to bring in some of those nuthatches and clinging birds, this is the peanut splits that you would put in that one. And that's a nice clean way to feed because you won't have any shells underneath your feeders. So that's a good way to get in some cool birds and not have a mess. So then we're going to talk about some seed blends. Okay, some seed blends is when we take multiple types of seeds and we mix them together, which is going to bring in a variety of birds. Birds choose their food based on the shape of the seed and the shape of their bill. So one of the first ones I have here is Choice Blend. So this one has some black oil in it. It has some of those peanut splits in there, has some safflower, has some striped sunflower, some sunflower chips. So a lot of different things. So that's a one to bring in a good variety of birds. So if you didn't mind the shells, this would be a good one to bring in some different birds. One of my absolute favorites is our No Mess blend. This one has peanuts, tree nuts, cranberries, cherries, a little bit of everything. If you get snowed in, this was a good one to have at the house so you can eat yourself. But this is a really good one that you can put in just about every feeder. I use this one in tray feeders, tube feeders, everything. But this one will also bring in all the birds. Those bluebirds where I said they couldn't eat the black oil, they can't eat this one, and they're big berry lovers. And you can find similar varieties of these mixtures at other stores, but like I said, just watch that you're not getting fillers in them when you're looking. So we talked about the finch feeder. This one has that Niger in it as well, but it also, if you'll see the little light colors in there, that is going to be some sunflower chips in there. Finch's two favorite foods are Niger and sunflower. So that has a combination of both. But here's the key. If your finch feeder is in a squirrel-proof location, meaning you have it on a pole system with a baffle, then you can feed finch blend. If it's not baffled, then you're going to need to stay with Niger. Niger has to be imported. So in the process of heat treating, it has to be heat treated before it comes into the US. For some reason, squirrels do not like it. The minute we pop those sunflower chips in there, the squirrels are all about it. So if it's not in a squirrel-proof location, stick with Niger. Another one, this one is just a nesting blend, so it's great for nesting season. Nesting season, the birds need higher protein, higher calcium foods, so you're going to look for things like that. Dried mealworms during nesting season, which is right now. And then this one is a cardinal confetti. So I mentioned they love the safflower. It has safflower, black oil in there, sunflower chips, and some mealworms. So you can see as you get into blends, you're going to bring in a different variety of food. So it can be fun to sample and see what you get when you start adding different mixes in there. So basically more foods, more birds, more joy. So along with those are basic seeds, but you can start adding, we talked about adding peanuts in there. You can start adding in things like different types of suet. We talked about the basic squares for that one feeder, but then you can also add suet nuggets in there. This particular one is our bark butter bit blend. You can put that in there. Finding little hanging feeders that you can hang up. This one is just a little bell that you can put up. This particular one's hot pepper. But again, it's made out of a blend of seeds. So adding variety of foods is going to bring those up. This is bark butter that it's a paste. You spread it right on the tree. That's going to allow the birds to come in, grab to take back to the nest. You can cut fruit that you put right out. Several people have had Orioles in the last little bit. They are migrating through. So cutting an orange in half and putting it out there. Mockingbirds, red-bellied woodpeckers, bluebirds, Carolina wrens, obviously the Orioles, ones like that will come for those type of foods. The nectar we talked about for our hummingbirds. So just a variety of food is going to bring you a variety of birds. And then solutions. So now you've put out all this food. It's also going to bring you raccoons, maybe. Squirrels, a lot of people tell us, oh, no, I don't have raccoons. I've never seen one. And that's usually because the raccoons are coming out when you're sleeping. Unless you have a nursing mama, like this one was at my house, then they come during the day because they can't get enough nutrients by just shopping at night. So they have to start coming during the day. So to keep the raccoons and squirrels out, you would need to add baffles. So with a baffle, the key is you need to put the top of that baffle at 5 feet. And then you need to have it 10 feet from anything they can jump from. So if you already have a pole, you want to measure where the bottom of your feeder is. Let me grab a feeder to better explain this. So your feeder is hanging, let's say it's hanging this high. If I sell you a baffle, it will not do you any good. Because if we put the top of the baffle here, the squirrel can jump this high. So that baffle would do you no good. The feeder has to hang so the bottom is at least 4.5 to 5 feet. So check the pole that you have at home and make sure when it's hanging, the bottom of it is at least 4.5 feet. If not, then you're going to want to feed you're going to want a feeder that's squirrel proofed, or you're going to want to feed hot pepper foods. That's going to be the only way that you can keep the squirrels out of there. Otherwise, the minute you hang up your feeder, the squirrels or raccoons are going to chew right through it. If you're not sure, take pictures. Stand next to the pole where the feeder is. Take a selfie of yourself so that we can see and get an idea, and bring them to us, and we'll help you problem solve them. Bring us pictures of your feeders and we can help you with it to figure out how we can make it work for you. Blackbirds are another issue. We already mentioned safflower is one solution. If you have any of our feeders, we have cages we can put on them so the blackbirds can't get through it. In that case, it keeps the cardinals out. But we already mentioned the cardinals love the safflower. So in another feeder, we would just put safflower out there so the cardinals can now eat the safflower, which the blackbirds don't like. And then the smaller birds can go in that caged feeder. So we definitely have solutions that we can work through, but don't hesitate to take pictures of your feeder setup. Use a measuring tape or something to show us the height so that we can figure out exactly how we can work with it to make it squirrel proof and raccoon proof and blackbird proof for you. And then creating a bird feeding habitat. So if you don't have a pole system yet, or you have one and it's tucked back in the woods and you haven't been enjoying it, think about your location. You need it to be where you're spending most of your time. Maybe bring that pole out of the woods, or maybe move it from that tree where you've had it hanging and bring it up to a more visible location. By the way, if you are hanging it from a tree, then it definitely needs to be a squirrel-proof feeder or hot pepper seeds, because that's the only way you're going to squirrel-proof that. We can't baffle a tree for you, but we can use those hot pepper foods or squirrel-proof feeders. But the biggest thing is you want it in a location where you can enjoy it. If you have it on the side of the house where there's no windows, you're not going to enjoy the birds. You're not going to remember to fill the feeders. You're not going to notice when the birds stop eating. So definitely think about the location where your feeders are and decide whether you need to move those to a better location. And then 3 important features as you're planning your backyard setup: the food, which we've already covered; shelter, so it can be bird houses. It can be taking a pile of brush as you're trimming trees and that, and just make some stacks of brushes along the edge of the fence line, the wood line, give them places for shelter. Use actual houses. We've little pockets, and you've seen the gourds and things like that. Spots like this for them to just roost in and sleep in. Things like that work great. And then water. Definitely they need water, not only for drinking, but also for bathing. They have to keep their feathers in tip-top shape. If not, come wintertime, they're not able to keep warm. Birds fluff up their feathers to form pockets of insulation. And if they don't have healthy, clean feathers, they're not going to be able to fluff in the wintertime. So definitely think about adding a bird bath to your yard as you're setting up. You want that somewhere near the feeders so that as the activity builds around the feeders, they're like, oh, there's a drinking fountain. But you don't want it too close to those bird feeders, because you'll start to notice that when they're eating, they're pooping a lot. And you don't want to be cleaning that feeder or that bird bath every half hour. So give it some distance from there. But definitely consider setting up a bird bath. And by the way, all of you that know what grackles are and how annoying they are, this one on the right is the adult, and that is a juvenile there on the left. They actually can be sweet and fun to enjoy if you only have a couple. Years ago, we used to have adults who would raise young every year, and it was just one pair that would raise young. And so we would enjoy them. We're tucked back in the woods. We no longer enjoy them because they have bred and bred and bred, and we no longer have just one couple. So it's not as enjoyable as it used to be when we would have this one single pair. So resources. You're also going to want to think about getting a field guide for identification. One of the favorites I recommend for new birders is the Birds of Maryland and Delaware. And it is as easy as flipping, you're out in the yard and you see a bird with red on it. This little section here, you flip to the red. And it makes it really easy to quickly identify the birds you found. Not so much if it's migration season because you're likely to see some unusual ones, but it is a good one for beginning. And then there's several different ones you can look into for as your experience grows. Here's just a couple other ones that we have here, but there's a lot of different ones out there you can look into. Then this is a really cool book for those who have not seen it, The Joy of Bird Feeding. I think the library has it, but I'm not positive on that. It's written by Jim Carpenter, our founder, but it is a cool book. Well, actually the page I opened up to is the bird food preference chart. So you're trying to, I want to bring in the, pine siskins. They're only here some winters, so don't bother trying right now. But I tell you, it's going to be an eruption year, and okay, what do the pine siskins eat? And you just follow this chart down, and it tells you what their preferred foods are. So it's kind of a cool book. And so rather than being an identification book, it's all about birds. And then the Merlin Bird ID app is a super cool app. It's a free app. I'm going to pull it. Imagine that. It's in my quick links. So it is a funky looking bird here. If you can see it, it's the one right there. Let's see if I can get it to. If you look for Merlin, there you go. You see what that app looks like there. So that's what you're going to look at for the icon. With this one, you can go outside and you just hit the sound app right there, and it will identify by sound the birds that are in your area, right? That are singing in your area, calling in your area. It's really a cool way to learn to identify birds by sound. So that's another one I would look at adding to your phone. Make sure when you add it, that you add the pack for our area, or otherwise it's going to be telling you have toucans and pink flamingos and all sorts of things. So download the app and then download the pack just for our area. Or when you're traveling, make sure you add the pack for the area where you're going to help you with bird identification there too. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take it off screen share, and then we will see what questions you have. Get my mouse to pick up here.
We have some questions. We have one question in the chat. Somebody asked, how often should feeders be cleaned in these times of bird flu?
So bird flu, fortunately, is not much of a concern for songbirds. It's more of a concern for raptors, water birds, things like that. So fortunately, it's not a concern. What you do want to watch for, if you ever see a bird at your feeder that has, it typically would be finches, goldfinches or house finches, that has an eye that looks skunky, that's a sign of finch eye disease. So in that case, you're going to take your feeders down, clean those feeders, be sure to disinfect those with a bleach solution. And then let them disinfect them, do the whole spiel like we talked about, and then put them back up. Finch eye disease, it's kind of like pink eye for kids, and it is very contagious. So that actually is more of a concern of what you would be worried about watching for. But yeah, bird flu is not really a concern for songbirds, thank goodness. There was a time when we just weren't sure what was going on, and really the concern ended up being more, oh my gosh, what was it? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. The locust, so there was a lot of problems with the blue jays eating the locusts, and they were getting sick from that. And that was during the time of the bird flu just coming around. And so that's where the confusion came of like, is the bird flu affecting songbirds too? And we were like the target area that year, Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland, for that whole thing. And they were like, oh, we're not sure what's going on here. But it turned out that they started then noticing the pattern that every time there's a locust eruption, this happens. So it was finally figured out that that's what that concern was. But how deep should a bird bath be? So I probably should say, how deep should a bird bath not be? So I have seen some bird baths that are just way too deep. Shallow is better than these super deep ones. If you have a bird bath that's too deep, or that you feel maybe, if your bird bath is a couple inches deep, consider adding some rocks to it to give it some varying heights. You think a little goldfinch or a little chickadee, what's going to happen if it tries to get in there to drink or to bathe in that? So if your bird bath is really deep, then just put some varying sizes of rocks in there. Or truthfully, it's good if you can have a couple bird baths in a couple different depths, something pretty shallow and then something, maybe a little bit deeper. But yeah, I'm seeing some bird baths out there that are like 4 inches deep in that, and the smaller birds are not going to be able to get in there and bathe in those. So you're going to see, your blue jays and grackles will be like, yeah, it's a pool party. But chickadees, goldfinches, the little ones aren't going to be able to use those. So
Okay. Well, I think that's everything. Thank you so much, Barb, for coming in and telling us about how we should have our bird feeders and explaining all the ins and outs of it. And we will see you in July.